For nearly 2 years now, we have been waiting for the moment when the dam bursts and the true horrific reality of the Gaza Holocaust comes crashing through into the mainstream. Yet every time an atrocity occurs that should fully open everyone's eyes to the unfolding Holocaust, it becomes obfuscated. Our news media can be relied on to provide cover for Israel because they are deeply compromised at the highest levels. However, there are signs that the system of Israel apologetics is fragile. Zionist ideology has become rigid and cracks are showing. Until now, reality has been fighting an uphill battle against a very expensive campaign of propaganda using all of the sophistication and complexity of modern communications. Much of this seems to have been aimed at blunting and confusing opposition rather than winning converts to the cause of genocide and the hatred of Palestinians. By nature, this creates a building tension, a collective cognitive dissonance between the horrors we see and the bland, mumbling concerns expressed by our politicians and pundits. The more expert they are in muting the natural alarm and outrage, the more this pressure mounts. I do not want to understate the capacity in the current media ecology for creating complacency and confusion, but the great weakness of pro genocide voices is that they cannot take any criticism whatsoever. When UEFA put out a banner reading, "Stop killing children, stop killing civilians," they were accused of blood libel by a wide range of Zionists. The highly respected journalist Stephen Pollard posted of the sign, quote, "They might as well have gone the whole way and written 'fuck you Jews.'" This sort of response may consolidate the siege mentality of their base, but it is not going to reflect well on them around the water cooler or in the pub. Most people tend to lack the nuanced understanding of anti Semitic tropes that this Hespera effort relies on. In their vulgar ignorance, ordinary people are liable to think that if someone feels personally attacked by a sign saying "Stop killing children," they might have something to hide. This is coming at a time when liberal Zionists are under pressure to be more critical of what is happening. Simply saying that you don't like Netanyahu and the current right wing government of Israel, a la Bernie Sanders, is not going to cut much ice in these circumstances. This situation creates the potential for an explosive end to pro genocide apologism. For example, the amoeboid creature that for some inexplicable reason is currently the Prime Minister of Aotearoa said that things were bad and that Netanyahu had, quote, "lost the plot," end quote. This caused considerable brouhaha, yet in reality he was adhering strictly to the liberal Zionist party line that this is all a Netanyahu problem of allowing Israel's perfectly reasonable need to massacre at least some Palestinians after October the 7th to go too far. The amoeba in question was guilty only of using undiplomatic language to say exactly the thing that the US wants its pets to say. Yet Israel's deputy foreign minister responded angrily by suggesting that the greatest threat faced by Aotearoa is possums, whereas Israel has to deal with a jihadi death cult. I personally would like her to come to Christchurch and tell that to the survivors of a massacre committed by a fanatical, murderous, racist Islamophobe just like her. I would like her to explain how she justifies labeling her enemies a death cult when the government she is part of has killed at least 500 Palestinian children for every Israeli child killed on October the 7th. Racist double standards aside, though, the reaction to the Prime Minister's comment shows that some anti Palestinian pro genocide people cannot tolerate any deviation from a very narrow script. They are genuinely angry at the controlled opposition of Western leaders whose job is to gaslight people with their wildly understated reactions and tepid criticisms. This has been a great strength in the past, with liberal Zionists able to burnish their credibility with the condemnations of zealots. But reality is starting to intrude. The current fashionable liberal Zionist exit strategy from their past embrace of genocide is to become suddenly concerned over starving children and to iterate that they have always been for a two-state solution. But is that a defensible position? The best way I can illustrate the problem facing Zionists is with a hypothetical example featuring a true liberal's liberal, Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg, a man, incidentally, who once took great personal umbrage at a random sign saying, "Don't be a shitlib," was interviewed on Pod Save America. Matt Lieb of the Bad Haspera podcast summarized his inauthentic rodent vibes on this occasion by dubbing him Rat GPT, which seems both reasonable and justified. On Pod Save America, Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend and first openly gay rodent to be US Transport Secretary, said that the US shouldn't support things that are unconscionable and that, quote, "we are Israel's strongest ally and friend. You put your arm around your friend when there's something like this going on and talk about what we are prepared to do together." End quote. The host's reaction to this was not the nausea and rage that it should have provoked. He was calm, as if they were talking about a neighbor who was overwatering their houseplants but prickly about accepting advice. Now, I don't know this Pod Save America guy from any other context, but I don't need to because on the screen I saw two disgusting racists who would never use these words or maintain this casual chatting demeanor if the atrocities were happening to a less demonized group. However, leaving that aside, imagine if Buttigieg had been pressed on the details of what he considers to be unconscionable. It's a strong word, therefore, he should have strong concerns. But we don't live in a world where anyone that Buttigieg would agree to talk to would question why the starving of children is somehow worse than shooting them, burning them, burying them alive. Nor would we expect any interviewer to contextualize the current starving children that so troubles their liberal consciences with the mountains and mountains of evidence that Israelis have targeted and killed children in systematic ways for many years, including killing hundreds, if not thousands, deliberately during the Gaza Holocaust. We might, however, see someone asking for specifics about what is unconscionable. And for the liberal Zionist, there is no right answer for that. Clearly, if you say that Israel is deliberately starving children, you will be attacked violently for blood libel. In fact, if you don't endorse the claim that starvation is all the fault of a Hamas jihadi death cult, then you're clearly a self hating Zionist, a Zionist in name only, and an as a Zionist. A single soundbite to the effect that Israel means to do all the terrible things it does is sufficient to send the Israel lobby money stampeding away from you into the arms of the rat fuckers, which admittedly would be a fitting and amusing end for Pete Buttigieg's political career. But liberal Zionists are trying to walk an impossible line. They want to condemn Israel in the abstract only while avoiding any mention of what they're condemning so as not to bring down the wrath of AIPAC on high that will smite them with ineluctable finality and having Smith move on. Whether it is from a media interrogation or from public pressure, some of these liberal Zionists will be forced into breaking with the genocidal project. They will be rejected from the Israel Supporters Club because if you can't handle the Jewish state at their mass slaughtering Holocaust worse, you don't deserve them at their Western liberal, yoga loving, gay person accepting, settler colonial, apartheid, slow genocide, creeping annexation best. In the meantime, there is also a lesson for humble believers in the Palestinian cause, even those who can't get Pete Buttigieg to agree to come on their podcast. Because there are implications for the liberal Zionists, the philo-Semitic apologists, the Israel exceptionalists, the casual racists, and the Islamophobes in our day-to-day lives. If you find someone wavering in their commitment to Israel's right to defend itself from Hamas, then encourage them to express what it is they find concerning about Israel's behavior. They have lived in an environment where, despite the real world asymmetry, it is the crimes of Palestinians that have been emphasized and given weight of emotion and essential meaning. Israel for them is only reacting. Once they start to see Israel go beyond any justification, even in the fantasy they have been immersed in, they may start to think of Palestinian resistance as a justified response. The more they start to think about these things, the sooner they will realize that this is not an occasion for mild or partial criticisms. Some may even admit that they were wrong and it wasn't all legitimate self defense until some arbitrary time when they personally deigned to stop making excuses for death and suffering in Gaza. Stranger things have happened. Above all, remember that things that can't go on forever don't. Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching.